What is up, everyone? Welcome to Office Hours with Anden. My name is Pete. This is something that we've been doing over on Instagram, just in our stories for the last couple of years, taking questions from you guys, talking about music production stuff, and we've been calling it Office Hours, and we're super excited to be doing it live on Twitch for the first time. Today, we're going to be talking about a remix that we did for Diplo pretty recently. We're going to be taking whatever questions you guys have as well. So, yeah, let's just dive right into it. As we're going, feel free to drop whatever you guys got in the chat. I'm really excited to just be an open book and answer some production questions and talk about, remixing in general. And we're going to take some demos from you guys at the end and give some feedback on some music that you guys are making as well. So Tom's hanging out in the chat, so you'll see him over there. Vipple, what's up, man? Yeah, you guys should check out Flow Waver as well. He's been getting supported by Christoph, by a bunch of really cool artists recently. That's Vipple hanging out in the chat right there. If you guys do have demos, just drop those SoundCloud links right into the chat. Tom's going to be collecting those. Yeah, it'll be a fun hour or so hanging out. John, what's up, man? Thanks for tuning in as well. All right, cool. So yeah, let's talk about this remix. So this is a remix that came out last year on Mad Decent. It was to the song Hold You Tight by Diplo. It's been one of our bigger records over the last year or so. And let's just start by listening to a little bit, and whatever questions you guys have or things that you want to hear me go through, we can definitely do that. So yeah, let's check this out. All right, Vipple, you brought up the low end, so let's talk about the kick and bass in this track. So this is really interesting. So here's the kick, and then let's just start with that. We got a little sub, and then there's a higher bass in here as well. So the kick is pretty cool. So this is actually the same kick from our record Void, which came out on Dynamic. So it's like pretty huge on the low end. It's got a lot of body to it. But the really cool thing about this kick is that it's very tonal. So it's not just this kind of like thing that exists only in the low end. Actually, if we go and pitch up this kick, you can hear it's playing at a very specific pitch, right? And the thing is, the original kick that we started with in Void, it was actually at a different tone. And so what I had to do was time stretch the length of the kick in order to make it play a little bit faster and play at a higher pitch so it matched the key of this song. So I think that's why I labeled it manual pitch. It's kind of like the idea of when you hear those chipmunk voices of people where it's kind of high pitched and spread up. That's that kind of idea. Yeah, John playing it so you can sample out of Twitch. I'm happy to send the sample to anyone, and it's funny. I always talk about sampling kicks and not trying to make them yourself. This song or this kick, even though we used it in Void, we had sampled it from another song before that. So yeah, sample kicks. That's something that we definitely live and die by. So yeah, okay, so we got the kick, and so let's go to the sub actually next. So this is a sub bass. It's just playing this kind of rhythm that the higher bass also actually plays. But the thing is, I wanted the sub bass to be a little bit smaller. Yeah, sampling kicks, definitely what we want to do. But yeah, the sub bass here is a little smaller because the kick is so big that you can't have a huge kick and also a huge sub bass. There's just not really enough space, especially because they're both kind of playing in that same like frequency range, right? They're both playing really low, something that you would hear from like a subwoofer, right? So if we just look here, we can see the kick is super, super low. And the sub also is basically in that exact same range. They're actually playing the same note, so they have to like be playing off of each other. And so here the sub is quite small. It's just these little stabs. And so the majority of that low end is still filled up by the kick. But the sub's just kind of filling in a little bit of the blanks in between the individual kick sounds. And so then the top end of the kick, or the top end of the bass rather, is this guy. And so I think this is a pretty cool sound, and we actually get a lot of questions about this sound, but it's honestly super, super simple. So let me just turn off all the processing here. So this is a synth called Diva, which I love using. It's from UHE. It's just a really good. It's a software synth, of course, but it sounds like a lot of analog gear. So it's yeah, it can create some really cool, unique sounds that can hold up against like actual synths. But basically, this sound is really simple. All it is just a single square wave oscillator. So what that means is that's like the actual shape of the sound wave for if you guys aren't producers. So you can actually see here that this kind of looks like a little like zigzaggy S thing. So we can actually go and maybe just change the actual shape of the waveform. And it totally changes the sound, right? And so it's just that square wave that has that kind of quality to it. That's pretty cool. And so that's it. That's the square wave. And then the only thing else that's really affecting this sound is just the filter section. So basically, if we open this filter, meaning we'll let all kinds of frequencies in this sound, we'll let all of that through, meaning that we aren't going to only play the low end or only play the high end. So if we open this up, that's what that like full sound sounds like, and it's a bit weird. I mean, it's kind of cool, I guess, but not that pleasant to listen to. So we just kind of close that down a little bit. And then the resonance feature just gives it the filter a little bit more of kind of high-end presence in a way. It's just a way of also manipulating what frequencies are actually coming through. So, I mean, honestly, that's pretty much it. There's a little bit of chorus to give that sound some width and a little bit of detune. And then the processing is, again, like quite simple. It's just a little bit of saturation with Decapitator, which if you guys want to talk about saturation stuff, that's probably the most important thing that you can be doing from a production standpoint for electronic music to get your music to sound full and complete and everything like that. So I'm just gonna we got Instagram going as well. So yeah, cool. Thanks. Awesome. What's up, everyone watching on Instagram? Yeah. So it's a cool. Yeah, it's a cool sound, but it's pretty simple, right? There isn't really a huge amount going on in terms of really complex processing, right? Yeah, John, happy to A/B with Decapitator. That's a great question. So when we say A/B, it just means listen with and listen without. So let's so this is, let me turn the delay on too. So this is with Decapitator, without. So there's a little bit more warmth on the low end, a little bit more of a kind of like volume boost. We could definitely go and really crank the Decapitator if we wanted. But here it's just a little extra, Yeah, a little extra warmth, a little extra low end. I find with saturation, you can go over the top with it and get some really cool sounds. But I think if you just add a little bit of saturation to a bunch of different sounds here and there, overall it can really make a difference to the full track, even if you aren't hearing a huge amount of saturation's contribution on the individual sounds. So yeah, responding to Tom in the chat, the preset is called Beefy. This is like a legendary preset, I think, amongst electronic music producers. It's literally the first preset in Decapitator. So if we just open up a fresh instance of Decapitator there and just click the first preset, it goes straight to it. And it's just, it makes your bass a little bit darker, a little bit louder, so you just kind of are reorienting things to add more volume and warmth to that low end relative to everything else. So again, it's just, it's one of those things where we're not doing a huge amount of saturation on the sound, but it's just that little bit goes a long way. Cool. So Nature Music, do you EQ out the sub so it doesn't catch any saturation? Yeah, so in this case, we do have a dedicated sublayer. So yeah, you can see I'm actually going and high passing a little bit here. So one thing that, if you guys know the remix, you might have noticed is that this is the production file of the remix. So when we actually go to actually mix and master all of our records, we'll save all the individual sounds just as stems, as like individual audio files, move them all to a new project, and then mix there. So this, in this sound, there is a little bit more low end than I would definitely want in the final version of a song. But I might go and, try to play around with just high passing some of this low end information out, because we do have that dedicated sublayer. I think if there wasn't that dedicated sub bass layer, I would probably just let this go all the way down. But back to the original question, I find myself actually applying saturation to sub basses a lot as well. I think just really, especially for the low end, and especially if the sound is coming from a digital source originally, adding that saturation can really warm up the sub frequencies and make it feel a little bit more on par with like the analog gear. Cool. Yeah, that's a really good question. So awesome. We got some folks becoming friends in the chat from Denver. I've actually never been to Denver somehow. Definitely got to get out there. I know Tom's been a bunch of times, but I've actually never been. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for those questions, guys. Yeah. So that's all on the low end. Yeah, and I know Tom posted in the chat as well. There's we're going to be listening to demos at the end of the session here. So if you guys have SoundCloud links, just drop them in the chat. Tom's going to collect all of them, and then we'll listen to them a little bit later. So I know some of you guys are producers, so I definitely want to hear the music that you guys are making. So yeah, just reading the next comment. So I struggle with warmth, but also with my knowledge of saturation. Go figure. So really interesting point. I yesterday saw the absolute best YouTube video I've ever seen, just explaining saturation. And I'm gonna pull that up. I'm just gonna grab the link and just drop it in the chat. We don't need to actually watch it together, but basically. Go to just the Hyperbits YouTube page. I mean, this video is brand new, so it's possible that Google hasn't even picked it up yet. But if you go to the YouTube channel for Hyperbits, that's a music production school, and they just did a 2-minute video on saturation, literally just 2 minutes. And it's very informative, giving good examples, explaining what saturation actually is. And I think that would be a really good starting point if you feel like it's something that you're not totally comfortable with. But yeah, happy to talk about plugins and strategies and all that kind of stuff as well. Yeah, because saturation is super, super important. All right, cool. So yeah, let's talk about some more stuff in the track. So I think we can talk about the breakdown a little bit. It's here, let me jump back to full screen as well. One interesting thing about this track, and I was actually before this looking back to some emails that Tom and I had sent to each other when we were going through the writing for this track and kind of trying to come up with ideas, and we found that our goal with this remix was to make something that we could play in our sets, but also Diplo could play in his sets. And we have quite different styles, I think, and so there isn't maybe a huge amount of overlap in the middle of that Venn diagram. But one thing that we noticed about all the deep house records that he was playing, regardless of kind of where they fell under the deep house umbrella, was that they all were really high energy and were very percussion driven. And so one thing that we wanted to do was make sure that in our remix, there was no part where there wasn't any percussion happening. So even when we get to the sort of breakdown build section here, like we have this clap going the whole time. There are these sort of like lasery little percussion shots. So there's like, even though it's a breakdown from this previous drop section, it's already carrying that energy forward to the next drop section. And it's because even though this is a breakdown, like we still have this percussion loop going. Vipul, I'm just seeing your question now. What was the strategy for fitting in the vocal from a creative and mix perspective? Yeah, super cool question. So let's talk about the vocal. So this is, definitely something interesting because it's a very, the vocal is basically an instrument in its own way in the remix, because it's just such an important part of the record. So let's just go back to the first drop, for instance. So normally if we were producing an instrumental track and we're saying, okay, first drop, we want, kick, some percussion elements, and some sort of lead synth or something, right? Like I always try to think of if someone's never heard my song before and we play them this song for the first time, when we're done playing it, they should be able to walk away and hum the song, right? There should be that one thing in the song which stands above everything else in terms of, this is the thing that me, the listener, should be taking away from this song. And so typically in like an instrumental track, that's going to be some sort of melody. But because we wanted to make use of this vocal, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything else really in the production that was clouding or taking away from the vocal in terms of what the listener should be focusing on. So if we actually go and just mute the couple vocal layers here, like there's not really anything that I can sort of hum along to, right? It's, we have a kick, a bass, some percussion, that little kind of like that sort of thing. And so from a creative standpoint, the composition is totally open for that vocal to be the main focus, right? Even on the second drop here, where we kind of get up to the next level in terms of energy, like there still isn't really that one thing that I know that I'm gonna bop my head to, right? And so that's where the vocal comes in. And so creatively, that's really the only thing there that's a lead, quote unquote, right? And we have some other stuff in the breakdowns, but even the instrumentation in the breakdown, it's not really a melody. It's just kind of chord stabs or individual notes in a way. So if we just go in, like maybe with the exception of this one arc, it's just those kind of like three notes. And so Vipul, yeah, back to your question. It's, we really wanted this vocal to be the driving creative piece of the record, and it's a remix, and the vocal is pretty prominent in the original, so it makes sense in some cases, but in this case it did for us to have that be the prominent thing in our take on the record, right? And so we just wanted to design instrumentation that was there to support the vocal. And let the vocal be the kind of main thing. From a mix standpoint, I mean, honestly, we didn't really do much of anything, right? So this, the vocal was already processed and mixed and whatever, because it was just a stem from the original. So we can go and... So that's just how we got the stem. So we didn't really have to do a huge amount of processing on top of it. In the mix project, my guess is there was a little bit of sidechain that we put on just to kind of get it out of the way of the kick drum a little bit. So, I might go and just do a little bit of like LFO Tool or something. It's kind of something like that. Sometimes you can do like a frequency split, so you're only sidechaining the lower frequencies. But the mix for this song was once the kick and bass got figured out, it was pretty straightforward because the instrumentation is quite minimal, especially compared to what we're used to producing. So yeah, there was a lot of space for that vocal just to live, and that made it easy from a mix perspective as well. Cool. All right. So yeah, any demos, just drop them in the chat. So Nick's asking, also, what's up, Nick? Thanks for tuning in. It's good to see you over on the Fair Play stream the last couple of weeks. So you could go over the effects that you have on the pluck lead that make that weird little tail sound. Yeah. So Nick, just to confirm, you're talking about this one. Sweet. Yeah. So this sound, this was recorded on our Korg MS-20. This guy, I can actually probably try to like recreate the sounds real quick. You guys should be able to hear that, I hope. So it's just a single saw wave. Just kind of like that. And then we're just kind of playing with the sustain and the release, just to kind of get those longer notes. But yeah, so the little tail sound. So let's turn off all the processing. So this is where we started. There's a couple reversed notes in here. So we have, for instance, this guy here. And so that's playing off of the individual notes. So we're getting that little bit of like that weird tail there. And then there's a bunch of kind of cool delays on here as well, from these few sends. So the first one is just, so let's see where we started. Yeah, so the first one, this is just a like a tape delay, but it's to the delay itself is very fast. So you can see it's on a dotted 30-second note, which is, I guess, halfway between a 30-second note and a 16th note. But it's just that kind of like wide slap delay. The second one, this one's going to be a little weird. So that one's bouncing around a little more. So this one, we're using EchoBoy for all of this. I feel like a Soundtoys commercial, but Soundtoys plugins are amazing. So definitely recommend them. This one is just a kind of like ping pong delay where you have a 16th note on the left, 8th note on the right. But what we're doing is after the delay, we're adding a couple tremolo plugins. So this one's just kind of moving it left to right, the delay. But then this one is actually only turning on the delay for a tiny little bit every 5 bars. So most of the time we're actually not hearing this delay, but every 5 bars or so, it's just popping up in volume. And then the last one is, I don't know what this one's doing. Oh, that's just kind of like down the middle. So there's actually quite a few delays going on, but because of like the tremolo stuff, it's never all the delays the same way all the time. It's, sometimes it's a little bit on the left, a little bit on the right. Sometimes it's different delay times and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think a lot of it comes from the reverse notes as well, that we just, it's just bounce in place, reverse the audio file and line it up however you like. And then the delays where we're adding those tremolo plugins, so we're not getting the delay all the time. The delay is just happening kind of at random times. That I think is the key to that sort of like randomness in a way for that sort of sound. Okay, cool. So just going back, make sure we didn't miss anything. Yeah, that saturation video is super cool. Yeah, Vipul, just seeing your comment on the vocal stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a less is more kind of thing, and it can't work for every single record. But yeah, I just find that so many of the records that Tom and I really like are just so simple. I honestly think that's one of the reasons that makes Art Bat records so cool, is that it's literally just like a kick, a bass line, one synth thing, and a couple of drums, but it works. And so I think if you can figure out a way to make these records feel full and big with fewer things going on, like a lot of the times it's a really it's a good recipe for success. Yeah, so this remix generally is kind of cool. Just in terms of the story of how it came about. So obviously Diplo is a pretty big artist, definitely one of the biggest artists that we've been able to work with. But I think one of the coolest things about being able to do music, and just from our experience in music, is seeing a lot of our friends go and do really cool things in the music industry, but then also people who we've met through the music industry becoming cool, like good friends of ours. And one of our friends, who's been a friend of ours for a long time, even from before Tom and I were making music together, his name's Luke, and him and Tom went to EDC together 7-8 years ago. And we've been friends for a long time. And at some point, Luke got into tour managing. He started working with at first Third Eye Blind, the like do 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 do, like that Third Eye Blind. And then at some point got an opportunity to start doing some work with Diplo. And today he's Diplo's head tour manager. And about a year ago, we were down in Miami for Music Week, and Luke had texted us saying, hey, like, Wes is doing this party. You guys should come by. He's starting a deep house imprint. And we went to this party, and it was like in this random warehouse right off of one of the highways, kind of in, like, it wasn't even in Wynwood in Miami. It's just in one of like the downtown neighborhoods. It was pretty sketchy. And we show up to this party, and there's probably like 400, 500 people there. But the lineup was Diplo, Claude Von Stroke, MK, Camel Fat, at least one or two others also. Like, it's an insane lineup. They didn't advertise the party at all. There was like random famous people. I don't know. It was like this very strange place. But anyways, we were hanging out with Luke, just like sitting on the couch at this party, and Luke was like, yeah, so like Wes is gonna do a couple tracks on the new label. You guys should do a remix for one of them. And we're like, I mean, of course we want to do that. But yeah, so I mean, it was just really organic, and Luke has been a buddy of ours for a long time, and he has his own festival that he runs, and it's just one of those stories where networking in music is so important, but also it's not networking for the sake of networking. It's just, your friends end up, you never know what they're going to be doing in a few years kind of thing. And we were able to get the stems and do the remix, and it's just really, really cool how it all came together. And I mean, it's like I said a little bit ago, we were trying to make something that we could play in our sets and Diplo could play in his sets. And, even though this record is so different from anything else we've ever made, it does still kind of fit into the puzzle in some way, which I think it was a really fun experience for us to be able to do from a production standpoint, but also a good just exercise for production to make something that was different for us. So yeah, cool. All right, so let's see what else we got in here. Man, thank you guys all for hanging out. This is fun. All right, so I've lost my place in the chat. Yeah, backstory on the Diplo remix. Yeah, Black Wands, we'll be checking out all the demos in a little bit, maybe in the last like 15-20 minutes or so. Yeah, Saiku music, awesome. Excited to listen to that as well. Tom making fun of me for being fat. Jeez. You can't even do a live stream without getting ripped on. Yeah, Nick, just seeing your question. Yeah, let's see. I don't think there's really much automation at all. There's like a little bit on this EchoBoy at the end, but that's just for like the very end of the song. And yeah, it's just the tremolos, which are just kind of randomly, kind of flipping on and off. Yeah, Vipple. I mean, Yato's got to figure it out too, right? It's this cool kind of melodic techno thing, but the tracks a lot of the times are really simple, and that's I think honestly the name of the game, right? It's not overcomplicating things, and doing more with less stuff is I mean, certainly challenging, but I think it goes back to this idea that, if you need 10 sounds to make a record feel full and complete, well, if you can make a record feel full and complete with 5 sounds, that means that each of those individual sounds is bigger and better than the individual sounds in the version with 10, right? So yeah, I mean, I think, and like it speaks to some of the new flow waver music too, right? Like it's pretty stripped down, but if you can create things that are interesting via movement, via the saturation and warmth that we were talking about, then yeah, I think you can end up in a pretty cool spot. Yeah, so Nature Music's asking how we group for mixdowns. Yeah, so actually you can see all this stuff is labeled how it would get grouped when we actually go to print stems for the mixdown. So a little bit's out of order, but basically we would take all the kicks, bounce those together, take the sub, bounce those together, bounce that just on its own, the percussion loop, bounce that together. And so generally there ends up being somewhere between maybe 20, 25 different sounds. All the percussion stuff I like to generally just separate out on its own, because those sounds, like each individual hi-hat and clap and whatever, a lot of the times there's some more detailed gain staging work that needs to happen at the mix stage, so I just like having that stuff separate. But something like, let's see if there's a good example in here. So like all these effects channels, right? I mean, there's 8 of them, 9 of them. Like there's really no need to have all of those on their own separate stem and mix every single one individually. At the end of the day, they're all just white noise. Gain staging wise are pretty close to where we want them. And so I think it's just more streamlined to kind of print all that stuff together. And yeah, just to make the mix project a little bit easier. But I generally think, yeah, all the percussion sounds, having those separated out is usually pretty important, and just makes your life easier later in the end. If you're making a sound that is some sort of, some lead melody that's made up of 3 different synth layers. Well, if the goal of those 3 different layers is to make one complete sound, then you can probably just print out all 3 of those layers as one complete sound. Because I think the other thing too is a lot of people, when they think of mixing a track, it's like, oh, I need to do all this crazy group processing and parallel compression and all this stuff. But if you can print 3 synth layers together as one stem, then any processing you do on that stem is technically group processing, right? So that kind of, I think when we're thinking of, okay, we print the stuff to Sims and then do a mix down, that is in a way all group processing. But it's just done on individual stems because we've already summed things into those individual stems. And look, if we printed out 51 stems to mix, could we maybe get a little bit more detailed and make something that's a little bit better? Sure. Maybe not, I don't know. But the process of actually condensing things down into a fewer number of stems, that goes a long way in actually getting you closer to the finish line of finishing the record. And finishing music is honestly, it's really hard to finish a track. And so I think bouncing those things into stems is a really good way to say, you know what, I'm not going to mess around with the melodies anymore. I'm not going to mess around with these individual layers anymore. I'm just going to print stuff to audio, and that's that. And look, if you really want to go back and change something later, you always can. But once we started actually bouncing things to audio to mix, I found that the time to completion for each track just sped up exponentially. All right, cool. So yeah, that's a really good question. So yeah, Tom is in New York right now. I'm here in Chicago, which is actually where I live. Yeah, so I'm quarantining by myself at home in Chicago. I actually can, if you guys were on right at the beginning of the stream, the little intro video we had was from my apartment, but I can see the city and, yeah, hopefully be back to New York soon, whenever we're all able to get out of the house. Jeff, what's up? Welcome to the stream. B-Mart, what's up? The guy with the book. If you guys watched any of the live stream sets that Tom's done, one of our good buddies and longtime Anden supporter, Brian, is #1 fan reading books while Tom is DJing. But yeah, miss you, Brian. We should read a good book together sometime soon. Yeah, Tom, you missed the backstory of the remix. Blame it on the book guy. Yeah, so Tom is just running the chat from New York. Wait, so Jeff, are there book delivery guys in New York? I can actually order a book from well, I guess that's kind of the whole idea behind Amazon. That was kind of a dumb comment to make on my end. Man, book delivery guys, how about that? Yeah, so we'll start up demos in like 5 minutes or so. Mr. Wasu in the building. Welcome. Thanks for hanging. Yeah, once again, if you guys are just joining, if you got a SoundCloud link for a demo, drop it in the chat. We're going to be listening to those in about 5 minutes or so. Tom's asking, yeah, I want to talk about remixes and that leading to other things. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the idea of using a remix to open up doors. It's not actually particular just to remixes, right? The more touch points you can have, whether it's through social content, whether it's through meeting people at shows, whether it's for doing a remix for someone on a certain label that another DJ supports, like the more touch points you can have, I think the greater likelihood that you'll be able to get certain opportunities in the future. So for us doing something like this remix for Diplo, that was that allowed us to then be one of it was a new label that he had started, so we were one of just like a few artists that had released on the label in the first few months. There's 5 or 6 or however many, and then they wanted to start doing higher ground parties, and so it's like, okay, we'll book the label acts, and there's only a handful of artists to choose from, and so we were kind of automatically in the conversations for some of those parties, and so we got to play the higher ground party at the Brooklyn Mirage back in September. We were on the lineup for the one in Miami, which got canceled along with everything else, and so I think doing remixes can be a good touch point to develop relationships with labels and other artists. One thing that we did when we started Anden was reach out to a ton of indie artists to do remixes for them, and basically we said, okay, we need to build up a Spotify presence. And sure, we can release originals, but best case at our stage, something might get 100,000 plays maybe on Spotify, and yeah, that would be great, but it wouldn't really translate into a lot of monthly listeners that we could then continue to connect with. And so one thing we did is we reached out to these indie artists that already had huge Spotify followings, people doing kind of like indie electronic stuff, and asked them if we could just do free remixes, and quite a few of them said yes. And what we were able to do is do these remixes in our style, but then able to officially upload them to SoundCloud, or not SoundCloud, to Spotify. And when they went on Spotify, then it was linked back to that other original artist who had, 1 million monthly listeners. And then we kind of got listeners that way, and we were able to build up a pretty big Spotify presence, which then we could then use as kind of a selling point to then open up doors for other things as well. So, we reached out to quite a few artists. I mean, this was 3 or 4 years ago. One of those artists was Billie Eilish when she had 300 SoundCloud followers, and we did an official remix for her, which it's pretty crazy to think about now. But yeah, we did one for Great Good Fine Okay, which is like one of my favorite indie bands. We did one for the singer Verite, who's super cool indie artist based in Brooklyn. But yeah, I mean, remixes are really great opportunities, especially for artists outside of the electronic space, where there's a lot of like particular things about electronic music that from the outside looking in are kind of difficult to figure out, from the network of labels and who the artists are and how things actually work and why it matters when your song gets played in a podcast and things like that. But by reaching out to these people outside of electronic music, being able to say like, yeah, we can, here's all you need to do is send us the stems and we can make it happen. And that was like a cool offer, I think, for a lot of people that we were then able to do remixes for. Cool. All right. So yeah, Nature Music asking, and we'll go a few more minutes, and then we'll get to these demos too. So Nature Music, so not mastered. Talking about so when music isn't mastered, lacks volume. And I know it's not your style, but love your monitors. So any advice to get me closer to a fuller mix? Oh, sorry, love your mix downs. Sorry, completely misread that. I think the single most important thing to do to get a great sounding mixdown is using reference tracks. So when I actually go to mix a record, I'll take 3 or 4 other songs that are stylistically similar and I think are mixed well, drop them into the project, and then I will constantly be A-Bing between our mixdown that we're working on and these other completed productions. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that's the most important thing. Just having good reference tracks, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel every single time you go to mix a record. And so you can use those existing those tracks that are already out there just as basically reference points to just try to match your track too. So yeah, that's one thing. And honestly, the other thing is just practice. I mean, we've probably mixed, 500 songs probably. That's a huge guess. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but it's at least a few hundred. And I think just the more you practice, the better you get. You can also try ear training. I don't have a huge amount of experience with this, but companies like Sound Gym actually provide services that allow you to train your ears and get better at just kind of recognizing differences between things from a sonic perspective, and that's a good way to improve your mixdowns. I know if you guys know Local Dialect, I know that's something that they're really big on, and they do a lot of ear training through Sound Gym. Cool. All right. So yeah, John, past, present, future is asking, so the 2 things on facing bands and other background pieces. Oh, that was directly to Tom. Cool. Right. Yeah. So I'm excited that was in regards to one of the demos. So I'm excited to check that out in a minute. Maybe looking for feedback on the mixdown. If you guys remember, we had to reach out to 03 years ago asking for an official remix. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, it actually happened with quite a few labels where we reached out asking to do a remix and they said no, but you can send us originals if you have them. And then we sent them originals and they liked them. So I think it was a cool way to open up some doors. The notorious Jamie at 03. Oh my goodness. Yeah, 1985. Oh, remix for Hiatus. Oh man, that was that was a cool track. We actually reconnected with Hiatus with Cyrus about a month ago. He lives in London and we were over there for a show, and we unfortunately weren't able to link up, but we trade some emails. I know he has a new album that he's just wrapping up right now. His music, if you guys don't know Hiatus, is some of the best chilled out electronic music that I know of. His music's amazing. He also teams up with a couple of videographers to do some really cool music videos as well. Okay, sweet. So I think it's demo time. You guys excited? Should we do some demos? Yeah, all right. So we got a few. Let's start this one. So a couple things for the demos. I just have them up on my second monitor here, and we'll play them. You guys will be able to listen. Tom and I chatted about this, and we're actually not going to play them through my computer audio, so you guys will still hear the tracks just coming from my microphone. Just for a lot of artists, sharing unreleased music is kind of a touchy subject, and so you guys will be able to hear the record, but it just won't be like the full-on perfect version. So yeah, let's listen, and we can go from there. So first one, Super Hot by Past, Present, Future. And let's see, there we go. Techno, where are we going? There we go. Sounds like something's doubling up maybe. Let's see. Give me just 2 seconds. There we go. Okay, so first comment, and this one is super tricky. I think the kick can be a lot more prominent relative to other stuff in the track. Right now, like the other kind of pulsating sub bass is pretty loud, and so I really want that kick to be the dominating thing in the record. And right now, I just don't feel it. Like I hear it, but I just want to hear that. I want to feel that punch, like right here, you know. Ooh, that's cool. It sounds like maybe there isn't as much of a sub bass right here on the second drop. I think that this could be something where you could have one of those like rumbly techno sub basses, where it's like the kick, the rumbly sub, and then that higher arp sitting on top. So past, present, future, John. Do you use Sylenth for that lead synth? Yeah, I recognize the ARP melody as one of the as one of the preset art melodies. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for using sound banks and presets and all that kind of stuff. I think, just making sure that you're tweaking them just a little bit. Although there is a collab between Hardwell and this dude Joey Suki that they straight up ripped a Silent preset ARP for the entire lead synth of the song. Yeah, this is like 10 years ago, but I heard it. I was like, I know that sound. But yeah, it was kind of funny. Yeah, I could put SoundCloud up on the screen. Hang on. Let's see here. Now. There we go. All right, sick. Cool. So John, thanks for that one. Cool track. Yeah, I think referencing for the kick and the sub, that's pretty tricky for techno stuff, but I think that's going to be the big thing here. And once you get that, then that will inform your decision of what else is left or what space is left that you can have things sit on top of the kick and the sub. Okay, Nature Music is up next. Let's see. It'd be nice to have some like more chilled out chords in that section as well. Yeah, I think the big thing for me, the instrumentation is nice. I think the drums, and I know you're not quite to the mix master stage here, but yeah, I think overall going for drums that are a little bit punchier, and that's starting with just sample selection. One thing you can try is getting more saturation and sorry, I'm just trying to pull this down. I don't know why there's that icon there, but you can try a little bit more saturation on the drum bus too when you actually do get to the mix stage. So one thing I like to do is surprise putting a little bit of Decapitator on, so whatever setting that is. But then there's another plugin from Soundtoys that I love for drum buses called the Devilloc Deluxe. And this is it's like part compressor, part saturation plugin. But basically just by putting this at like 5% wet, that will just add some kind of like perceived volume and warmth to some drums as well. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing here is, all the sounds are there, but the track just needs, I feel that the track can be like produced a little bit more, and that comes from more saturation, more distortion, finding drum sounds that can feel warm and a little bit softer, which is kind of the vibe of the track, but still have enough punch to them to kind of carry through in this electronic setting. So yeah, and then I'm gonna recommend reference tracking to everyone. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's whether it's Kygo or other artists in like a similar space, that's good reference tracks to be using. All right, Black Wands. Okay, so off the bat, cool vibe. I like from a melodic like composition standpoint, this is really cool in here, and the chords are super nice. I think overall from a mix standpoint, I would encourage you to really dive in to more reductive EQ here. There seems to be a lot going on in the low mids that you can carve out, and I think right now that's kind of making the mix feel a little cluttered and muddy in a way. So I think really carving into the low mids of a lot of these synth sounds, that's going to help just bring out each individual part a little more. I also think the kick, I'd probably just go for a different sample. It feels a little kind of like slappy, not thumpy. I think getting a thumpy kick is really hard, but that is like a big, yeah, that's something that I think is pretty important for this kind of music. So one thing I would also, in regards to the arrangement, right now this build, it's just kind of building, and then it drops kind of like right away. Building, big drop. So I think it could benefit from having either one bar or one beats or two beats or one bar of like silence. Not total cut everything to silence, but maybe get rid of the drums or get rid of the effects. And so it builds, there's this one bar interlude, and then it drops. I think that would definitely help. Yeah, the kick just feels a little too kind of like trancey. It has that kind of like slap to it. I just want it to be like that kind of sits under everything. And that's pretty much all going to go straight to the sample selection. Okay, cool. So, next one. Sid. Man, we stick everyone in their houses and then everyone starts making techno. Love it. It's kind of same thing on this kick. It feels pretty like slappy. It doesn't. I want it to really kind of punch in the bottom. So one thing you guys can do, just as like a quick recommendation, is when you're actually doing your mix downs, is throw just an EQ on the master and do just a low pass filter down to like 110 hertz. And so that way you can only actually hear the low end. And then reference this against your reference tracks. And that will really inform like how loud the low end of your kick is relative to the sub bass, which is really hard to kind of get a feel for, especially if you aren't listening to something like in a club. That's a really good way to kind of still be able to reference the low end. That lead arp is super cool. I would probably bring that lead arp up like 3 or 4 dBs, and then everything else from a like synth standpoint down. Like the kick and the hats, I think are gain staged okay. But that like ARP I would bring up, and then everything else I'd push down, because right now the atmospheric stuff is what's like really loud and up front. Like the clap I would push down in volume as well. Yeah, I mean, I think there might just be a bit too much going on. Like, I would probably nix this section here, and then just have it go from this ARP here to sort of like fade out with the effects coming in, start to bring in that ARP, like filtered down a little bit. And then we drop there. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really cool idea. That ARP for me is definitely the strongest part of the track from a like composition standpoint. So I would definitely bring that out more. And then the other stuff just kind of sits under it to support. Okay, cool. So Sid, I want to make sure we get to everyone else's demos, so I'm going to skip this one for now, but feel free to just shoot us an email with it, and we can shoot you some feedback either this week or on our next stream. We can start with it. Will, what's up, man? Yeah, let's quickly go through this one too, because I know there's a couple more. Oh man, yeah, we got a whole bunch of stuff. Thank you. Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about with the kick, right? You can already tell this kick has so much more of a full low end, and it's not overstated through like the mids and the highs, right? It's not like trying to slap me in the face. It's trying to like punch me in the stomach. If that makes sense. Not to get too violent on this beautiful Friday afternoon. Yeah, this is nice, Will. All right, let's see if we bring in the offbeat hi-hat. There we go. I would have it be a little bit more prominent. Like, loud and proud with that hi-hat, you know? Nice, Will. This is sick. Yeah. What does it say? Yeah, Will, that's really smooth. I think I really want that record to get up one more step, right? I mean, it's a really smooth vibe. Like, we're building nice with the drums. And then it's like, okay, I'm ready. Like, you know, you want to reward the listener for making it to the end of the track. And I think kind of what happens is that, like, we sort of get here or there. But right, this melody, like, I've already heard this melody a little earlier on. I really want that next level, and I feel like currently the track doesn't quite get there. So I think, you know, all the pieces of the puzzle are there for sure, and the production is really smooth, like a lot of your stuff. I think it's just what's that next step in terms of energy that makes me say, yeah, I'm glad I listened to all 5 minutes and 46 seconds of this song, right? All right, sick. So let me, hiatus the man. Sorry for my rhetorical questions. Cool. Yeah, I love getting like a nice variety of demos. That's it's fun to listen to those. Sorry, I'm just catching up on everything. Yeah, that Ramsey, that master EQ tip. I mean, honestly, I think that's the easiest way to see if your track is gonna hold up in a club, because honestly, it's Yeah, it's really tough to reference low end when there's all this other stuff going on, and so just by cutting everything out, it's just really easy to say, you know, how loud is my kick relative to my sub. Um, yeah, Will, in regards to the mix, I mean, I thought mix wise it was pretty good when this lead came in. It's kind of it's a bit sort of like loud and feels like it's living in kind of a different space than everything else. Maybe it's like a like sidechain pump groove thing. I'm not quite sure. Um, but but yeah, yeah, no, it's cool. I think it just needs that next step in terms of energy, and I think yeah, it can be super super cool. Cool. All right. So yeah, we've been going for about an hour. I think we're gonna wrap up pretty soon. If you guys have any last questions, feel free to drop them in the chat right now. But yeah, this is something that we're gonna be doing more regularly moving forward. Office Hours has been a blast doing it over on Instagram, and so you know we'll keep doing some music production content there, of course, and yeah, the streams here we'll be doing pretty regularly as well. But we also have some other types of streams that we'll be starting up pretty soon. So if you guys don't already, make sure you follow us over on Facebook. We'll be posting all the information there. And yeah, it was awesome seeing you guys connect with each other as well. So yeah, cheers for tuning in. Tom, thanks for running the chat. You did great. And yeah, like, share, subscribe, donate on Patreon, blah, blah, blah. We don't actually have Patreon. Please don't try to do that. But yeah, no, you guys are awesome. Thanks for hanging out. And hope you all are staying safe at home and having a good, and you're able to have a good weekend. All right. We'll catch up with you guys soon. Cheers.